going on, everybody? Welcome to the Awesemo.com on the Contrary show for week 14 NFL edition. I'm Dave Lockwood at Laffy_D, LOUGHY_D for those of you listening on the podcast. Along with me, as always, Alex Baker, Awesemo himself. And again, well, not again, apologies for being late. Little scheduling issue. It was not on our guest, who I'll introduce in just a second. Actually, this man jumped in here and saved us despite being told the wrong time of the show. So we'll get to him in a second. He's been with us many times. But first, Alex, what's up, man? You have fun watching that game last night?
Anytime you get to watch Pittsburgh in a primetime game, you got to do it. I mean, they are the most exciting team in football.
In a weird way, though, they kind of have been. They had the Chargers game where they came back from it yesterday. Our guest, Rich Hribar, joins us at least a couple times every year. One of our favorite guests, one of the sharpest guys out there in the fantasy football space. Check out all of his work on sharpfootballanalysis.com and follow him at Lord Reebs on Twitter, REEBS. Rich, I thought that the Vikings might finally play a game that wasn't decided by one score.
Nope. They find a way. You know, I was watching the game with my buddy last night, and it was 23-0 at halftime. And I said, well, how are we gonna get to this to be 24-23 at some point? So we all kind of jokingly made those tweets and had those kind of flipping kind of conversations, and it ended up still almost getting there. Although, I mean, the Steelers still needed like a big time suck out to like get there and even to win that game. Even if they get the 2-point conversion, they still have to go to overtime and win that way too. But they at least made the second half entertaining for us.
Yeah. I mean, look, that was a bullet in a tight window to Hribar from bad. Hey, that was a sexy pass.
It was a dime, who knew when you stopped throwing, 1 yard bubble screens to Ray McLeod, something may effectively happen on offense.
Yeah, Alex, though, I did the same thing. I tweeted right after the Steelers scored their first touchdown. There's like 3 minutes left in the third quarter. I had tweeted, I really want to turn this game off and finally get some sleep because I'm on the East Coast. You know how it goes. But I know it's the Vikings, and this game could be tied by the end of the third. On cue, I said that 10 seconds later, Cousins got picked, and then we've got a tight game that's almost knotted up. So I don't know. These games have been wild in prime time. A lot of fourth quarter comebacks. But how'd you do last night?
I had some decent lineups. It was a really tricky slate to get the low price guys. Had a lot of kickers, and Chris Boswell did like horrible. So it's like funny because like no one cares how Chris Boswell does except like the showdown grinder.
Right. Yeah, he missed that 48-yarder early in the game, and you just okay, this is how it's gonna go.
Yeah.
But anyway, happy to have you guys with us. Hit that thumbs up if you haven't done so yet. Much appreciated to all you guys hanging out with us on a Friday morning. If you haven't subscribed we just hit 68,000. Okay, let's go. Just hit 68,000. So only takes a second. Help us feed that algorithm if you like this free content. And if you want to join, hit join down below that thumbs up. Get the custom emojis, the badges, the shout outs, the free super chats each month. And we'll always try and prioritize your questions along with everyone in our premium Discord. So Rich, as our guest, I'll throw this to you first, man. There's a lot of topics on this slate, but the one I keep coming back to, and I want people's opinions on, so I'm asking everyone, is this Bills-Bucks game, because Fournette's getting a lot of ownership right now, and rightfully so. He's been heavily involved in the passing game. But the stack here on our top stack tool, we actually have Tampa as the highest top stack probability, but outside of the top 5 in stack ownership. How are you working this? Like, are you saying, well, you know what? I think the Bucks will throw anyway, but Fournette's getting targeted 8 times a game. Do you want to go heavy stack, heavy Fournette? What are you thinking?
Yeah, that's interesting. I haven't really dove into like ownership yet and, projected ownership, but my initial thought was that Brady would end up being more popular than Josh Allen. So that will be kind of interesting to kind of dive into. What we have here from a top-down perspective, though, is we've got 2 of the teams in the top 3. The Bills are first, and the Buccaneers are third in pass rate on first downs outside of the fourth quarter, which is what we love for fantasy, right? Aggressive passing offenses. We know the Bills, like this, especially against this Buccaneers defense, it's going to be a pass-heavy script for them. It remains to be seen if the Bucs kind of go against the grain and they try to run the football. Remember Leonard Fournette, if you look at Leonard Fournette's box scores recently, he's only gone over 47 rushing yards once in the past 5 games. He's doing his fantasy damage because he's stacking high value touches. I mean, he has 28 catches the past 4 weeks, and he now trails just Jonathan Taylor in opportunities inside the 5, inside the 10, and in the red zone. So it's all high value stuff that he's getting. And that's how he's able to get there. This isn't like Jaguars Leonard Fournette that's rushing 24 times for 97 yards. Like we're not seeing a lot of those games of box scores. He's involved in the pass game. He's getting those tuds, on the gram with Gronk. But yeah, I was interested into trying to see if I could try to stack the Bill side here, because I think that's a good spot for them for a fantasy side, because we've had if we face the Bucs, you got to do two things. Like you got to be able to defend the blitz, right? Like they're the blitz heaviest team in the NFL, and Josh Allen has only been blitzed on 26.7% of his dropbacks. But when he has been blitzed, just 59% completion rate, 6.5 yards per attempt. And he's faced 5 other teams in the top 10 in the NFL blitz rate. And those teams have blitzed him 36% of the time. And against the blitz in those games, 59.7 completion rate, 5.4 yards per pass attempt, 2 touchdowns. Now, when those teams haven't blitzed him, though, he's got 68% completion rate, 8.2 yards per pass attempt, 9 touchdown passes to just 2 interceptions. And when the Bucs have been kind of pressed with some of these good quarterbacks, they've only faced 4 quarterbacks in the top 12 in QB1 points per game: Dak Prescott, Matthew Stafford, Jalen Hurts, and Carson Wentz. And all 4 of those guys have posted top 7 scoring weeks on the week against the Bucs. So there is opportunity here, I think, for Josh Allen to maybe not have like a great real life football game when the blitz does get home, but also it's going to open up the avenue for have a lot of splash play ability. And we know he comes with the legs as well in a pass heavy script. So I am interested in the Bill side here.
Alex, how much of this do you think is just from an ownership or popularity standpoint, not just the pass catching for Fournette, but also the fact that we've seen the Bills early in the season. They had a great run defense because they faced just a slew of terrible run games. And now you saw Derrick Henry before the injury, what he did to them. You saw with Jonathan Taylor. And then the Patriots, sure, I guess you could say you throw that game away, but they still rushed for 220-plus yards when the Bills knew it was coming. Rich just dropped a lot of analysis on both sides of this. How do you approach the equal sides of this game with the highest total on the slate by far?
Yeah, I mean, whenever you put 2 really prolific passing offenses against each other, that's like a fantasy gold mine. So Tampa this year, first in neutral game script pass rating, and Buffalo is 6th highest. So, and Buffalo being a dog in this game is likely to pass more. And teams are Tampa have only passed or only rushed about 30% of the time in neutral game scripts. So, I think it's going to be probably the most likely game to go off for sure. We have one of these 2 teams being the highest scoring stack about 29% of the time on a 11 game slate, which is huge. So it's hard to poke holes in, but I mean, Dan Campbell said Jared Goff is going to get more deep shots. So we got some other options.
You'll never let that go. Yeah, I can't wait for that. We have Jake Fromm too, right, Rich?
We might. I mean, we might get Jake Fromm, who threw for all 4.8 yards per pass attempt in the preseason this year.
I was looking at his passing yards prop this week. It's actually up at Prize Picks, which is the sponsor of today's show. It's like 160. I mean, 60 minutes, 4 quarters for a quarter, you got 160 passing yard prop. Like you said, that's assuming he starts. But Rich, I don't want to spend, because we got to start a little late. I don't want to spend too much time in this game, although it is going to be a big game.
It is the game.
This is the game, right? So I'm okay doing that. That's why I wanted to get out of the gate with this. You broke down all of those stats for Buffalo in the passing game and Josh Allen. If you had to say one thing that needs to go right for him to see the Josh Allen that we saw earlier in the season, opposed to the Josh Allen that outside of Monday night's game has really had some struggles in a few recent starts, what would it be?
I mean, they just have to get more contribution from the non-Stephon Diggs pass catchers. I mean, it really has been just all Diggs the past month. I mean, you look at Emmanuel Sanders and Cole Beasley, their output, recently, because remember the Bills last year, they were getting contributions from all kinds of guys. Beasley was one of the best interior receivers in the NFL last season. A lot ran through him as well.
Gabe Davis had 8 touchdowns.
Yeah, and they were just getting a lot more outside of Stephon Diggs. They're just not getting that this year. It's really been Stephon Diggs and really nothing really pretty recently. Dawson Knox has had some high touchdown weeks, but we haven't seen him have post high yardage totals in any games. So they've got to find a way to get the football and some plays out of these guys. I actually do think it does line up for Beasley to have an advantageous matchup if they can get him going. I mean, the Buccaneers are 26th in points allowed to slot receivers. They also play zone coverage, 75% of their defensive snaps, which is the fourth highest rate in the league. And against zone coverage, Beasley only has 5 fewer targets than Stephon Diggs on the season. So maybe it's a Cole Beasley spot, but Cole Beasley's always tricky to play from a DFS stance because we need touchdowns, and he doesn't score very many of them.
No, he doesn't. And you're right. I mean, Sanders was great early, and didn't he have 2 multi-touchdown games early in the season?
I mean, they were using him as like a downfield target, and he was really the lid lifter, and that's kind of really been absent, the past month.
Yeah. Alex, speaking of absences, Eli Mitchell and Deebo Samuel still weren't practicing yesterday for San Francisco. This is kind of big because, I mean, you got a guy in George Kittle who's amazingly the tight end 4 on the season in PPR formats, despite missing 3 games. And then on the other side, Joe Burrow is dealing with that pinky finger that was all blown up the other day, but apparently he's throwing all right in limited practice session yesterday. What do you think about this game between these two teams, and how are you approaching Mitchell and Samuel right now? Because this could have a huge ripple effect throughout the rest of this team and game.
Yeah, I mean, those are 2 huge guys where if they miss, that's going to really change the complexion of the slate, especially because we don't have much value at running back so far. And Jeff Wilson, they've kind of pegged as the starter, most likely starter if Eli Mitchell doesn't play. So he would be a really nice value. I actually bet the George Kittle over on 5.5 touchdowns before the season started. I'm like, oh my God, he got injured like immediately, but somehow he's on pace for like way more than that now. So that was a pretty awesome comeback. I know we were kind of high on Kittle last week, so that really paid off. I mean, he's not going to go under the radar again, but he'd be a fantastic play if Debo doesn't play. So yeah, I think that'd be huge.
El Negro Loco, is there a reason you hid Kev's tree? He was just saying normal stuff, unless there's something about this guy I don't know. Our boy El Negro Loco in chat right now, patrolling the streets. I don't know. That may have been a misclick, man. But we'll see. Maybe he knows something I don't. Just don't want to get this guy done dirty. Rich, what do you think about this 49ers squad right now in a game that has, I think, a 49-point total, which is actually one of the highest on this slate?
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at, this slate as a top-down view. We say, all right, and we know we're going to get a lot of, projected ownership in that 4 p.m., Buffalo Tampa Bay game. And we've also been in this spot a couple times this year where we're waiting on that projected high-scoring 4 p.m. game, and it doesn't happen. We were just here, a couple weeks ago at Cowboys Chiefs, and everyone was holding a lot of pieces in that game, and we ended up holding the bag. So what about some of these other games? Like when you're looking at other games that have potential to pop, it's not very not a lot to choose from here. And Bengals 49ers actually 2 functional teams that actually say, well, all right, there's an outcome here where this can shoot out, right? Now the 49ers just have all these kind of missing pieces that throw kind of a wrench in things. The backfield is really tough to diagnose because, if you look at Jeff Wilson, he came back early from this knee injury by basically like every doctor that I follow on Twitter. The Twitter doctors say like he wasn't expected to come back. And now we've seen him leave a game early because of the knee injury and miss practice time because of the injury. All that put together kind of signals like he probably did come back too soon. And his body is saying like, yeah, probably not ready to play professional football. Also, when he started a couple weeks ago against the Jaguars, he wasn't very good in that game. He hasn't really been good. He had a touchdown that Garoppolo should have hit him for in that game, but he hasn't really shown us anything either that like if Elijah Mitchell's out that like we should just run and flock to Jeff Wilson too, and from a talent perspective and the injury perspective. So we might see more JaMychal Hasty. If Debo doesn't play, they might even hand the ball off to Kittle a couple of times this game. Who knows who the 49ers, who they'll hand the ball off to. Kyle Juszczyk could get a goal line carry. There's a whole bunch of stuff that could happen from the 49ers perspective, but we know when they do throw the ball, they're going to throw the ball to George Kittle and Brandon Ayuk. This is assuming Debo is going to be out. The ball is going to go to those 2 places. So from a throwing perspective, we know we can at least count on that. Kittle, for as much as the 49ers kind of pull the rug on us, like 2 weeks ago, he had 2 targets. Like they always seem to do stuff like that. But we're getting the touchdown score, Kittle, for the first time ever. Like Alex said, he already has matched his career high in touchdowns. This is his first multi-touchdown game of his career last week. Like
that's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's wild. So they're a tough team to diagnose from the running back perspective. But I think if you want to go for them they're not a road underdog, but they are on the road. And if you think the Bengals can kind of, put up a fight, and I think the Bengals do have a matchup advantage throwing the football, then if you believe in this 49ers passing game, we can still hone in on the two pass catchers here. Like I said, assuming Debo is not fully, capable of playing on Sunday.
Can we get to Garoppolo as a stack?
You're a braver man than me.
Yeah, I don't know. By the way, does it not feel like George Kittle leads the league over the last few years in touchdowns called back by offensive penalties? It just feels like every year he's got 3 or 4 of them that come back on an offensive penalty. But he's been awesome. Alex, here's my only thing, and I hear everything Rich is saying. It does seem like Jeff Wilson, just in terms of that knee, that's always worrisome. But, man, this guy, if Mitchell's out and then, Sermon's on the IR, I don't think that makes a difference. Shanahan wants nothing to do with him anyway. But you got Wilson at almost minimum salary on DraftKings. There's no real good value because it looks like Mixon was going to play. So you're probably not getting someone like Samaje Perine. I don't know. Maybe Mixon won't play. But assuming he does, are you going to get to Wilson and just hope that the volume is there against Cincinnati? Or are you looking elsewhere too?
Well, I mean, Wilson isn't a guy that's going to be a workhorse back. So this isn't a situation like Mark Ingram.
You don't think so?
No, because the beat reporters are saying JaMychal Hasty is kind of that change of pace passing downs back. So that does create some game script dependency on Jeff Wilson. So I think that at 4,900 on FanDuel, like that's a crazy low price for Jeff Wilson. So it's worth, going to him. I think that San Francisco's a run for steam. Like a lot of times he can get there on just volume. What Rich said was concerning though, because if he does get pulled from the game earlier, like running backs already have a pretty high chance for injury. And if that's even higher, that could be definitely a factor. But he's like so cheap on both sides that like we know that one of Jeff Wilson and JaMychal Hasty has to be a great play. So if Mitchell doesn't play, you're gonna want to get one on one of those guys.
Where are you at on the Cincinnati side with this Burrow injury?
Yeah, I think if Burrow doesn't play, that'd be huge. But if he does play, I think that we just play the Cincinnati side like normal. It is a tough matchup for Cincinnati, and they're only a 1-point favorite. But I think that they have a lot of upside for sure, and maybe people will be drawing to some other games.
A lot of uncertainty on this slate, though, Rich, with just a lot of guys like T. Higgins. I don't know if he's going to be out there. I'm hoping he will. I think Burrow probably will. Mixon didn't practice yesterday. So it's not just the San Francisco side of this game that leaves us with a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we saw Mixon, he had an illness. T. Higgins did practice on Thursday, so that's usually probably a pretty good sign. We also have now we're going to get some no, not a pun intended here, but we're going to get some point chasing on Jamar Chase. Like a lot of people are going to be waiting for this now to flip on the other end, right? He ran ultra hot on the high variance targets early in the season. Now he's run cold. He has just, one catch in his past 5 games on a target 15 yards or further downfield. But we also know he still continues to get those targets. So will there be some kind of, playing for flop lag on him, trying to get another one of those big weeks? Because we've seen when Jamar Chase does hit, it's big, it's large, and you can flip the tide on a slate easily with a guy like Jamar Chase. And that's what's kind of been tough with Burrow, right? And you probably don't see him get a lot of ownership because he's tough to stack now at this point, because now there's a dilemma. Do we play just T. Higgins now that his price has gone up? Or do we now try to pivot, and try to get, maybe the upswing of Jamar Chase, who has run into that variance. But it is a matchup advantage. I think if Burrow his finger is fine enough to play, at a baseline level. This is a game where you don't want to line up and really run the football on the 49ers. Their weakness is their cornerbacks. So you want to spread them out like the Bengals can and throw the football. It just, depends on the status of Burrow's finger and how confident they are in dropping back to throw a lot, because that's the way they should come out in this game is wing this rock around.
It's crazy, man. Jamar Chase was the wide receiver 3 through the first 7 weeks of the season. And he's got to be outside of the top 20 since week 8, right? I mean, he has to be. Where is he?
I mean, he's gone over like 40 yards once in this game.
Yeah, he's 32nd. But the funny thing is, since week 8, T. Higgins is the wide receiver 14. So little role reversal there. That's kind of what you're talking about.
Yeah.
It's not just like, okay, get Jamar Chase in and then maybe get some Higgins and some Boyd in some lineups and maybe some Awesemo as well. Now it's a lot more difficult to try and figure out where you go on this team. That's a good point. All right. So, Rich, let me stick with you for a second and talk Las Vegas, Kansas City. Darren, I don't think Waller plays. Do you?
He hasn't practiced yet, and we're recording this, Friday at 11:30. Yeah. So it depends on today. He's got to do something today.
Yeah, it seems unlikely, but I won't speculate too much. If Jalen Richard doesn't get activated, and we already know Drake is out, is it reasonable to assume that Jacobs gets a lot more passing down work again and is someone that could easily be out there for the large majority of snaps, whether they're up or down, like regardless of game script, or is it just not a good enough spot for you to target?
I mean, this is kind of emphasizes what this slate is, right? When we're talking about Josh Jacobs being like one of the optimal plays, like it puts kind of everything in perspective for week 14 DFS. I mean, if Jalen Richard, he was placed in COVID IR on Saturday, he's not able to get cleared. It's just going to be Jacobs and basically Peyton Barber. Peyton Barber's not really a pass catching threat. So we've seen Jacobs involved. He already has a career high in receptions anyways. So I think he will be involved in there. Now you just have to worry about game script and do they just get flooded like they did last time? Because when these two teams played in week 10, the Raiders got flooded, and it wasn't even like Kenyon Drake came in and caught a bunch of passes either. Like the running backs just didn't touch the ball. Jacobs had 12 touches in that game. So you're just worried about that. You're not worried about the matchup at all because we know the Chiefs will acquiesce rushing yardage and rushing production. We're just worried about the touch counts and game script, right? Like that's all we're really worried about. And it seems like that would at least be in Jacobs' favor, if it's just him and Peyton Barber to tack on some of these catches. The catches aren't going for anything. If you look at he averages 6 yards per catch. But just the fact that he's catching them gives him a little more of a floor out. And if they get inside the 5, he's going to get those touches too. So I think he's a great top-down look of saying this is week 14 DFS. Josh Jacobs is popping for everybody.
It's crazy. It's Alex. It's like when Rich mentioned Fournette on Jacksonville the other day, 6 receptions, 7 targets, 24 yards and no touchdowns, but 6 receptions is equivalent to a touchdown, right? Yep. So it's got to be good for something.
Yeah, I like that line of thinking where especially Cole Beasley, we're saying doesn't get touchdowns, but he could easily get 6 receptions. So
I'm talking about a running back. But yeah, I hear you. Do you like Jacobs, or is this a spot that you're not getting? I mean, he's what? Wow, he's one of the highest owned players on the slate right now.
Yeah, I think Jacobs, if it's just Jacobs and Barber, that does give Jacobs a huge advantage in the receiving game for the Raiders. So I think that that's pretty promising. He's been targeted 22% of the time that he's been out there running routes. So in addition, he also ran 73% of the dropbacks he ran a route on. So that we even saw last week. So I think that's a pretty good read that I guess they could go more to the fullback if they wanted, but most likely Jacobs is going to get some more routes.
Are you looking at anything in the passing game from Kansas City, Renfro specifically?
For Vegas, yeah, I think Renfro, if Darren Waller continues to be out, then that gives a nice bump in targets for everyone, but especially Renfro, who's the highest target wide receiver. Waller's back. I don't really have any read whether he's going to be back. We'll find out soon. But I think that versus a team that's a big favorite, you sometimes get more passing volume. So these guys all have pretty big upside. Rich,
the Kansas City side, again, this feels like the third game that they've played this season that hasn't been in prime time, by the way. Right? It feels like every single week they're playing on Thursday, Monday, or Sunday night. But I kind of like that because stacking them is so tough if you were trying to go Mahomes, Kelsey, and Hill. Mm-hmm. And then I had mentioned this to Matt Savoca on our matchup show yesterday. There between Mecole Hardman, Byron Pringle, and Demarcus Robinson, they have one game north of 15 DraftKings points this season. They combined throughout every game that these guys have played, put them together, one game north of 15. So I don't really know how to stack them if you're not stacking just one with Mahomes, or if you're trying to go with someone cheaper, or you go Kelsey and Hill, but you go dirt cheap everywhere else. What are you doing with the Chiefs?
Yeah, I mean the salary cap always makes it tough because neither side is giving you like a Chiefs discount. They don't care if the Chiefs haven't been the Chiefs of 2020. So you do have to pay up for these guys, and they're in good spots. Obviously everyone will talk about the Raiders in the cover 3 and how Mahomes kind of torched them when they were in cover 3 in week 10. But even against 2 high safety looks in that Raiders matchup in week 10, Mahomes was 8-12 passing for 121 yards and 2 touchdowns. Like they were still in the bag even when the Raiders went to 2 high safeties. Mahomes has had his way with this defense, especially of recently. He's thrown for 340 or more yards in the last 3 times these teams have played. Kelsey, like a lot of people always talk about like the narrative of T.Y. Hilton versus the Texans, but I assure you, if you go look up Travis Kelsey's game log versus the Raiders, it is the stuff of legend. We won't have to run down the specifics, but I mean, he is absolutely just obliterated the Raiders, and that makes sense because the Raiders are a cover 3 based team. And, everyone that's played Madden knows, the tight end kills cover 3. You can run those tight end seam routes. You really use, Travis Kelsey to your advantage if you have him. And, Tyreek is a guy, he already had multiple touchdowns against them earlier season. So people easily will glom onto that and look back on that. But the Raiders actually don't give up a lot of huge plays. And we haven't really seen Tyreek drop those 60-yarders this year. He's been more, we've never seen the Chiefs drop those really this year. Yeah. So, he's more of a touchdown target guy. Like this version of Tyreek Hill in 2021 is a lot like what we saw the back half of last year outside of the Bucs game, where they're finding ways to scheme him open in the intermediate levels. And they're funneling him targets. But we're also losing that like component of like, all right, where's our 80-yard touchdown here, popping off. But you got to pay for these guys. But I do think it's a great spot for them. And like you said, with the fact that they haven't been on the main slate so often, it feels like we'll push their ownership still like to moderately high levels because a lot of people haven't been burned by the Chiefs this year.
Big time. Yeah. And a lot of them on the main. I think the last time they were on the main slate, Alex, was against it was that 4 p.m. game that ended up being dreadful, I thought, where they Green Bay. Everyone had that. Wasn't that I think it was a 4 p.m. game. Everyone had that just locked in as a shootout, and it went 13-7.
The Cowboys.
Oh, that's another one. Yeah, the Cowboys. Yeah, I think the Green Bay one was with Jordan Love. Yeah, so it was ugly, and it's been ugly in most of these games. That Cowboys one, like you pointed out, I don't know. The last good game they had, Alex, there's a Las Vegas matchup.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the Chiefs are. I mean, they're scary to fade every single time that they're on a slate. The one thing about this game that's different than the last match versus the Raiders is that was in Vegas in a dome. This one is outside with 16-mile-an-hour winds. So the weather conditions in this game are a lot worse than a few weeks ago. But that's not to say that Kansas City is not a great option. It's so much a bigger bump down for the Raiders, whose stats are kind of propped up by the fact they play in a dome. The Chiefs, I think, if you want to stack them up, like definitely, it's a good option. It's just a little bit tougher to find an advantage if you're spending all your money on your stack. It kind of limits the differentiation you can achieve with your lineup.
Do you want any of these tertiary guys though? Like, are we still taking shots on the Pringles and the Hardmans or the Robinsons of this world?
I think no. Pringle maybe. Like the snap counts have been down because Josh Gordon has been in about 30 to 40% of the time each week. But Pringle was in there 77% of dropbacks last week. Hardman was only in 20%. So it looks like Hardman's the one that's really suffering. So he's definitely someone. I bet the under, and that really paid off last week. If there's an under on him again, it's just like he's not out there enough to really get any production.
All right, Rich, I've asked everyone about this one this week, and it was great because I'll ask Alex before a show, hey, what do you want to talk about? Any specific topics? And he goes, I think Titans running game could be sneaky. And I said, thank God. I mean, if everyone's going to disagree with me, but this guy agrees with me, at least we're somewhat on the right track. And here's what I mean by this. I'm looking at this and I see, let me ask you, when's the last time, and you're not going to have a specific answer, but you'll see where I'm going here. When's the last time you've seen a team with a 26.5 point total? And I know you haven't looked at ownership, but a 26.5 point total, 8-point favorites at home, and not a single player on the team is projected north of 3% ownership in an atmosphere like that. It seems crazy, but then you look at the team and you go, okay, I kind of understand it. Are there any ways we can get, and staying true to the name of the show, contrarian by getting to Tennessee with a big total as big favorites against the bad Jaguars team?
Yeah, I mean, earlier in the week, I've been bringing up, especially on FanDuel, Deontay Foreman at 5,900. Okay. I don't know if anyone's looked at FanDuel pricing and has caught this, but Dontrell Hilliard's $7K on FanDuel.
What?
He's more expensive than Ezekiel Elliott. He's more expensive. Like it's absolutely, he's the same price as, he's more expensive than Javonte Williams, Chuba Hubbard, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, James Robinson. I don't know if anyone's caught this, but Deontay Foreman's 5,900 on DraftKings or on FanDuel, which is geared towards what the role is in the offense. The other thing is his role is actually the most stable of these backs. We still haven't seen Dontrell Hilliard operate with Jerry McNichols, who's going to be back, who missed the 2 previous games before the bye week. So we'll see if he even has a pass catching role. We know Deontay Foreman's kind of like the banger, and we'll get the goal line carry. If there are goal line carries to be had in this game, there should be, like you said, because they're huge home favorites. There should be points here. So I think specifically on FanDuel, Deontay Foreman stands out as a potential value play because he's not going to catch a lot of passes, but he can get in the box and he's going to get a lot of rushing attempts. I mean, Dontrell Hilliard had a 70-yard touchdown run. His time was basically expiring in the second quarter of that Patriots game. And then outside of that, he only had 11 carries, to 19 for Deontay Foreman. So I do think that banger role is actually Foreman's in the offense. And I think there's some fragility to what we even get with Hilliard with McNichols coming back.
I think so too. I think McNichols hurts Hilliard more than he hurts Deontay Foreman for sure. And the crazy thing to me, Alex, is you look at that, Foreman at 19, Hilliard at 11. They combined for 30 in a game they lost 36-13. So what does the rushing volume look like if they're actually playing with a lead and look to maintain the type of offense that has gotten them where they are to this point?
Yeah, I mean, the crazy thing is last week, Hilliard and Foreman they both had like really big performances, both over 100 yards, somehow getting it done, even though Derrick Henry is out. Their run game has been good. So, I mean, Hilliard, he had a great game, but he did lose a fumble. So I'm kind of wondering if that kind of negates how well he did with that breakout run, kind of having that negative. So I don't know how the coaches are going to handle that, but I agree. Foreman's kind of like the safer play here and probably the less flashy option, given that he hasn't had the same production as Hilliard recently, and they're huge favorites. So I think Foreman's ownership is just way too low this week.
Me too. I thought he'd be at least high single digits. We got him at 3% or something.
Yeah, it's about that. One note here is Julio Jones is possibly going to return for this one. That makes him maybe a little bit more likely to throw, but he's coming out of a hamstring issue, so I don't know if he's going to be 100%.
Yeah, I was going to ask you guys, Rich, do you think if Julio plays do you think we can get there, assuming he stays healthy throughout the game? Or is it, I know we're all just everyone has a lot of trepidation going to a guy like Julio these days, but it's, who else do they have? Westbrook-Ikhine and Dre Fitzpatrick and Jeff Swain?
Yeah, I think there are two things. One is just how much do they, unleash Julio, right? He hasn't played even more than 75% of the snaps since week 1. Right. This is a team that actually is trying to get these guys all healthy for the postseason. I mean, if the Titans can they're still in a good spot record-wise, and we would assume that they can still win this game this weekend. They still have another they still have a Texans game. They did lose to the Texans, so I guess we should account it, but they're trying to get all these guys healthy for the playoffs, basically is what I'm saying. So I don't know how much if they're really pressed to lean on a guy like Julio in this game. They might just try to get him on for 50-60% of the snaps, try to make sure he doesn't re-injure or re-aggravate this thing. So I think that's what just makes it really tough to do some guesswork. I would assume that when he is in the game, though, like he is involved in like the high leverage passing situations. So you have that going for you as well, to where like the snap count maybe isn't quite have as much overlap to getting like the value opportunities.
Agreed. I'll say this one. So to your point, and to Jared Lloyd in chat, who said they aren't going to put him out there if he's not close to 100%. Kind of agree with that. So if they do put him out there, then do you wonder?
We did this with Dalvin Cook last night. Like
exactly. Dude, it was crazy. There were a lot of blue check marks on Twitter yesterday, and guys that I respect, obviously, but going, get Dalvin Cook out of here. He's the guy's shoulder clearly was fine. I mean, I don't know. Alex, you call it, man. You call it with those separated shoulders of yourself. Like if they come out there and they're good to go and they're playing well, I don't know. Let them go.
Yeah, I mean, like I happen to be the expert on shoulder dislocations, having it happen 6 times. But yeah, it's like you got to be smart about these injuries where like you don't aggravate a shoulder injury by playing 90% of the snaps versus 60. It's just going to happen on a random play. Like it's like pretty much impossible to predict. It's like maybe a higher chance of injuring than an average week, but you gotta kind of like use some logic where a hamstring, that's a much more likely one to be
especially
limited.
with Julio.
Yeah.
Like Julio could be 100% going into it and 5% after the first quarter, because that's kind of just what he does. It's a shame, but his hammies are made of string cheese at this point. Shout out to our sponsor Prize Picks, by the way. Amazing promo going on. Outside of the fact that if you use the promo Awesemo or code AWESEMO, you get up to $100 when you sign up and deposit for the first time. But also now when you do that, using the link that our boy Tyler Zander is about to throw in chat and the one in the description, you will get a free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. Huge, right? Go to Prize Picks, check it out. It's awesome. They have daily player prop contest where there's no juice on either side. You're building 2, 3, 4, 5 player prop lineups. You can pick from an array of stats, an insane menu of sports, some you probably never even heard of. Like they have disc golf on there. I swear they did earlier in the season. You can mix whatever you want, be it football, basketball, hockey. You can mix them all into one. And unlike a traditional parlay where if you only get 4 or 5, you win nothing. Here, if you hit 4 or 5 on a 5-player lineup, you still 2x your money. You still make money back if you go 3 or 5. There's a million different ways that you can do it. It's awesome over there. But the biggest thing right now, again, Awesemo gets you $100 up to $100 deposit bonus. Free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. Everything on the site, every tool we have for every single sport, $90 value. Just sign up at Prize Picks, whether it's prizepicks.com, App Store, Google Play Store. So yeah, it's an awesome site. You will thoroughly enjoy playing there, and you'll get your free month and be able to take advantage of our free player prop projections as well. So check it out, prizepicks.com, sponsor of On the Contrary. All right, Rich, let me ask you about the Falcons and the Panthers. I guess before I do, is there anything for the Jaguars that you have any interest in? It's such a tough team to get to.
Yeah, I mean, it is very tough. I will say, and no one's gonna, they're tired of hearing like the name or anything. I'm not even saying you have to play him, but I do think that the most interesting piece on their offense is probably Laviska Shenault this week. That's not fun at all. I know a lot of people are on the Treadwell train, but I mean, the Titans are actually dead last in the NFL in points allowed to opposing slot receivers. They're actually dead last in targets faced and to opposing slot receivers. And when these teams played earlier in the season, the Jaguars gave Jamal Agnew 8 targets in the slot. And now since Jamal Agnew's been hurt, Laviska Shenault has moved back into the slot. So I know that his name has burned a bunch of people this year, but he's the one guy that kind of pops on the Jaguar side. If anyone, by definition, pops on the Jaguar side.
Yeah, it's tough. It's real tough, man. That team is bad. The Atlanta Falcons are another team that's not particularly good either, but Russell Gage has almost a 26% target share over the last 3 weeks. Not getting a lot of deep targets, but kind of playing like a discount Jalen Waddle role, and the fact that like just get him the ball and hopefully he can make play yards after the catch because he's racking up a really high reception rate. But aside from that, Pitts is since those big games in what was it, week 6 or 7 or week 5 or 6. Since then, he's the tight end 17. He has really, really been underutilized, and Cordell Patterson's been the one guy that's been super efficient, but even his target share has dwindled a little bit, despite the fact that Ridley's off the field. Where are you going, Rich, and then Alex, with this Atlanta team? And then we'll touch on Cam Newton and the Panthers.
I mean, I think there's only one guy that you could really keep playing on Atlanta to feel good about, and that's Cordell Patterson. Russell Gage was even targeted the last time these teams played. And if there was one unit you could say that is actually good in this game, it would be the Carolina defense. At home too, especially. I think that he'll definitely have more than 0 targets in this game. Russell Gage will. But also, I don't think it's really a great matchup for him as well. I don't think it's a great matchup for the Falcons offense. I mean, we'll probably see Stephon Gilmore, be matched up with Kyle Pitts a lot. I mean, Kyle Pitts is just getting so much help coverage and double teams thrown his way. It's almost impossible for him to succeed at this point, especially since Calvin Ridley's left. Just them not having another vertical element in this passing game, on this offensive line too. It's so bad. It's just been really a tough go for Kyle Pitts since Ridley's gotten hurt. To really sustain any type of value and get any type of downfield looks. And this team isn't very good at scoring touchdowns either. So, I mean, you're not seeing any type of end zone targets for, a guy like Kyle Pitts either. So it's really tough. I would say Cordell Patterson would be the only guy I'm still really kind of interested in because he's the only guy that's consistently gotten there. But if you want to play Russell Gage and chase these targets, I don't really have a ton of pushback because the ball has to go somewhere.
Yeah, I don't really want to either. I don't know. I'd prefer not to. I'm with you. I don't even know how much I love Cordell Patterson this week either. Like this whole Atlanta team scares the shit out of me, Alex, every single week.
Yeah, I think the main reason is they're just not a very good football team.
That usually contributes to it.
Yeah.
Sure.
I'm definitely going to stack up Atlanta again like I did last week. The thing is they just throw the ball at one of the higher rates in the league. Rushing only 39% of the time in neutral scripts. And Matt Ryan is super cheap. You can get Gage and Pitts at reasonable prices. So this one, the thesis of the play is just all about the correlation and the guys you can fit around them. So I think that Atlanta is a buy low team.
All right. What about on the other side then? Cam Newton. He's getting a decent amount of ownership right now. Is this just straight like run him out there solo, run him naked, throw him with DJ Moore? You can't go with a double pairing with Cam Newton at this point, right? Or can you?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you probably would only want to stack up Cam with one guy, probably DJ Moore, with Christian McCaffrey out for the rest of the season. That's going to bump the target shares of guys like Moore, Robbie Anderson. Those are really the only 2 guys that I'd consider playable in the stack. But with Chuba Hubbard and Amir Abdullah being the running backs, that's a big bump to everyone else. The only thing is it's counteracted by the fact Carolina is going to pass less with Cam as their quarterback.
Rich, where are you at on this offense now that Cam had one decent game and then what was he, like 5 for 21 before getting benched against Miami?
I mean, just absolutely deplorable. I was worried about that coming in that week. He's getting a lot of steam just because of his, stats against the blitz in Miami being like literally like one of the most blitz heavy defenses. And that ended up being a huge problem for him. That's not going to be a problem for him here. I mean, you look at Atlanta right now. I mean, they are dead last in the NFL in pressure rate and dead last in sacks. We also have the fallout of, Joe Brady and, Matt Rule wanting to run the football. Well, now they're going to at least be in a spot where they can hand the ball off a lot. I mean, I don't want to say that Carolina's not going to start running the ball effectively. They haven't run the ball effectively all year, but as home favorites against the Falcons, they're going to be in game script to use Cam Newton and Chuba Hubbard to kind of control script. And it kind of sets up for what Matt Rule really is kind of desiring. I mean, when these teams played early in the year, Chuba Hubbard had 23 carries in that game. 24 carries. He didn't really do much with them. He scored a touchdown, but when you pair Cam Newton's now added influx of rushing ability to this offense, I think this sets up for a real heavy run script. And for fantasy, you're going to have to get there as a byproduct through efficiency, which you can against the Atlanta Falcons. And particularly on DraftKings, Cam Newton's really cheap. So I don't really have any pushback for anyone that wants to go like him or even the Taysom Hill route there because they're both so cheap. But I do think that this plays out to be kind of more of a neutered passing volume game for Cam Newton. It's going to need to get there on, the touchdown production.
Yeah, maybe a skinny stack with Moore or something, but I don't know. Everyone got so excited about Robbie Anderson after that one game where Was that even a game where Newton started, or was that the one where he just threw him a touchdown on one of his few snaps? Like, I don't even think he started that game, right? I don't know. But yeah, I'm not trying to go load up on full stacks with Cam Newton, despite me agreeing with you. It's a much better matchup than last week. I want to get to a couple more things before we close this out. 2 games specifically. And if we miss anything, we got more strategy shows coming up today, tomorrow. We have the 4.5 hour live before lock show all the way up to lock on Sunday afternoon. So, hey, hit that thumbs up. You haven't done so yet. We got almost 250 watching, and subscribe to the channel. If you hate it, we'll gladly refund your misery. You never have to hear from us again. Just hit unsubscribe, but I don't think you'll want to do that. All right, Alex, Alvin Kamara. I don't know how people, I'm honestly surprised that he's not the highest owned player right now. I get that he's up there. He's around, 15%, but he's behind a lot of other players. This Jets defense they're not just bad. They are god awful. And Taysom's dealing with mallet finger. You've got Mark Ingram on the COVID-19 list. Even Ty Montgomery, who could potentially be of somewhat of service in the backfield, he just hit the COVID list. And they clearly aren't a big fan of Tony. So was Tony Jones, right? I don't know. How does Kamara coming back, assuming he's at full strength, how is he not on the field for like 100% of snaps? Maybe a little bit exaggeration, but feels like he's got to be out there a ton in the best matchup you could get.
Well, that is a little bit of assumption because he's been gone for 4 weeks. So I don't know if we can count on Kamara being out there as much as he had been earlier this season, especially against the Jets. But the main thing that is kind of making me a little bit more tepid on Kamara is that Taysom Hill is continuing to start at quarterback. He's a guy that passes a lot less to running backs when he's out there. And we saw that Kamara's production last year when Taysom Hill started those stretch of games was really like kind of limited. Taysom Hill vultures touchdowns in the red zone and runs the ball more. So it's kind of a triple whammy against Kamara's production, but the matchup is good. I just think that there's a lot safer plays on other teams.
Okay. For me, it's more so I think he was close to playing last week, and then it was a Thursday game, and so he had a week and a half, so additional several days of rest coming into this, and I don't know who else. They don't even have Deontay Harris, who's suspended now. I mean, this whole team is bad, and they actually have a shot at making the playoffs. But Rich, what are your thoughts on Kamara and the Saints this week?
As the week has gone on, I've kind of grown on him, especially just because, part is a byproduct of this running back landscape, right? Like we're talking about guys like Josh Jacobs, who are the standouts? We've got Austin Eckler at the top, and then you've got Kamara. And then the fact that just more and more running backs keep going on COVID for the Saints, like just keeps like, well, maybe we're going to have some early season Kamara usage. Remember before they even picked up Mark Ingram, I mean, he was getting over 20 carries a game. The thing was, he wasn't really catching a lot of passes. So that's the one like worry you have with the double whammy of like, he wasn't catching a ton of passes even before he got injured. He had like 2 standout games. And then you combine that with, the Taysom Hill effect, is he going to catch a lot of passes? But the fact that there's no Mark Ingram, there's no Ty Montgomery, it all seems to be coming back to like, yeah, he could still touch the ball 20 plus times in this game. You just got to need touchdowns if he's not going to catch passes, but he's definitely someone that I've grown on as the week has progressed.
Yeah. And I think I could be wrong, but I thought last year, even when Taysom Hill was in there for those 4 starts, I think Kamara was still the RB1. Could be wrong. I have to look that up.
It's tough when you go back to the sample of Taysom Hill starts last year because he made 4 starts. Game. And one was like an all-time, like the Kendall Hinton game, which should be just thrown out of the existence forever. And then the other 2 games, they kind of like, they played 2 blowouts. And then the one game they actually trailed, he actually caught a bunch of passes. Kamara did against the Eagles. Yep. So it's really tough to kind of diagnose that small sample. And remember, they also had Michael Thomas in those games.
Right.
So it's really kind of hard to take that 4-game sample and say this is a one-off or what's going to happen. I mean, there are probably some things we can take away from it because Taysom Hill is going to run more. He's not going to check down as much. But as a 1v1 of what's going to happen Sunday in those 4 games, there's just so many different variables in place this Sunday that were in those games a year ago.
Yeah, no doubt. Such a weird season for Kamara, though, because he wasn't getting the target volume, but he was breaking his career high in carries week after week, which was which was strange. Anyway, there was a lot more I wanted to get to, but Alex, let's close it out with our top fade, pivot, and our favorite bet of the week. Go first. Who's your top fade and your favorite pivot for week 14?
So my top fade is Alvin Kamara. I feel like the ownership is too high.
This is going to be fun.
Is he your pivot? Anyway, I think
no.
The bottom line is Taysom Hill is going to be a net negative for Kamara, in my opinion. So I'm more likely to go to a guy like Eckler that has a similarly good matchup versus the Giants with a backup quarterback. And we don't have as many concerns about the quarterback play in LA, especially with regards to targets. So I think that is kind of my top pivot from Kamara for bets. One of the guys I'm kind of keying in on this week is Russell Wilson. Seattle's been absolutely terrible running the ball, and Alex Collins is supposed to be the lead back again. He's just not been able to get it done at all. They've been pretty effective throwing the ball with almost 8 yards per attempt. So I'm thinking that versus Houston, a really weak defense, they can pad Russell Wilson's numbers a little bit, and the line's only to 39.5 passing.
All right. I love it. What do you got, Rich?
Yeah, I think my top fade is going to be a really popular player.
Oh, the suspense.
Oh, man.
The suspense. A really popular player. Boom. Oh, you're back. Okay. You cut out right as you were about to give us the goods. So go ahead. You said it's going to be a really popular player, and then we went off.
Oh, did you guys lose me for a second?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, my bad.
Left us high and dry, Rich.
My guy is Antonio Gibson. And especially if JD McKissic is back, because we haven't seen Gibson. I don't know if there's been an actual full role change for Antonio Gibson because we haven't seen them play a negative game script since the bye. So I think he still has to have a prove it moment for me before I believe like he's back to the player like people were drafting in the second round of fantasy drafts this season. And I think that this is a not great spot for the Washington football team. I think this sets up to be a huge passing script for Dallas. And Washington's already a pass funnel defense anyways. I mean, think of how many snaps they've trailed through the course of the season, and they're still NFL teams are still 5th in pass rate against them. The fact that Zeke and Pollard are both banged up, and they're this is only the second full game they'll have both of their all three of their wide receivers available. I think it's a huge passing script for Dak and the boys. And they're going to shred Washington. I mean, Washington really isn't the only thing that's changed is like third down variance for them. They're really not still doing a lot of things. And I also believe that the way they're playing offense, this whole 3 yards, control the clock thing, like that's very fragile. That's a fragile way to play football. I think it could be like a real house of cards moment for them this weekend. So if that negative game script kind of comes into play and McKissic is playing and we don't see that Antonio Gibson's not having those opportunities, I think that definitely he could be someone that comes in way over-owned this weekend, and we see a lot more of the early front end of the season Antonio Gibson stuff we've seen. And the Cowboys would be my favorite bet of the week as well. I love them in this spot. I think that this game, based on my metrics, it should be almost 7 points. So I think you're getting almost a field goal worth of value here as well. And then, my pivot plays, I would say I was going to go with DK Metcalf to pair with Alex. DK is a guy that's he still had eight or more targets in 3 of his past 4 games. He was so close last week. I know it doesn't help anyone that played him, but he was so close. He had 1 foot out of bounds on a touchdown. He was overthrown on one. He had tackled the 2-yard line. It feels like just such a good get right spot against the Texans this week, and where he's priced in that like construct of like Mike Evans, like all those other guys, like he could be one of these guys that just goes overlooked based on his last month of production.
I love that. All right, I'll close it out with this. I'll pivot off, fade Barkley right now. I know that he had 20 looks last game, and he could be involved in the passing game, but at around 15% ownership, that's a bit much for me on a team that might be starting Jake Fromm and has a 15-point implied total. It's just I appreciate that bad running or good running backs on bad teams can put up numbers, but this is a little much for me at that ownership. There's so many good ones. And I guess one of us has to do it, right? Well, I'll go to Deontay Foreman. If this guy, it's possible, I think, that he gets over 20 carries this week and some goal line work. I don't like that he's not involved heavily in the passing game, but I think there's touchdown equity there for sure. So, all right, that'll do it for us. Rich, as always, man, great stuff. Appreciate you coming on with us. Follow Rich at Lord Reeves on Twitter. Check out everything at sharpfootballanalysis.com. Alex at Awesemo DFS, myself at Laffy_D. And shout out to Tyler Zander for producing this show. Be back with you next week for another edition On the Contrary, presented by Prize Picks. Peace.